Welcome to Connection Artist, the podcast for building better relationships by design. Love and human connection are fundamental needs for all of us, but how do we cultivate lasting, emotionally healthy, fulfilling relationships with ourselves and others? I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in meeting everyday people with diverse backgrounds and ages who all have one thing in common: a genuine passion for fostering meaningful connections. You'll hear their heartwarming stories and practical advice for building lasting marriages, lifelong friendships, and self-love. In this season 1, we sit down with 10 couples, learn how they met, and hear the secrets behind how they've built lasting marriages. Their insights will inspire and enlighten you. I also interview guests who found and maintained warm, lasting friendships for decades, and they're sharing how they did it. And lastly, we can't forget the importance of growing a loving relationship with ourselves, so we discuss building self-love and confidence. I've brought together a fantastic lineup of guests for you to meet who will share their unique stories and invaluable communication and relationship advice. Together, we're learning the secrets to building more meaningful, fulfilling relationships, one conversation at a time. I'm Luca, and I invite you to join me in becoming a connection artist. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have two really amazing people. I've got Britt and Tyler, who've been married a little under a year, but they've been together about 4 years. I'm so excited for you guys to meet them and to hear their story. It's a modern love story made possible by dating apps. So if you're out there looking for love on a dating app, here's an example of a couple who found it. So with that, I'm going to let Britt and Tyler introduce themselves. Do you want to share your age and anything else that you'd like to share before we talk about how you met?
Sure. I'm Brittany. I am 26. I use she, her pronouns, but also identify as non-binary. You want to go?
And I'm Tyler, and I'm 31.
We're both anxious people sometimes, too.
Good. Well, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And how did you guys meet? Briefly, you were sharing before we started this podcast that you met on a dating app. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that initial dating experience went for you?
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah, well, I was working in retail at the time up in Lakeville. I was actually originally from southern Wisconsin, just helping cover a store that needed assistance, scrolling through Tinder while just waiting for people to come in, and all of a sudden I was like, hey, there she is.
Actually,
Swipe right for sure.
That is funny because I was out in Lakeville just for like a therapy reason, and then happened to cross Tyler's, and the first thing that caught me was actually his eyes, and I was the one who messaged him first, and I said, hey, you have beautiful eyes. I can't remember exactly how I put it.
Yeah,
but I was the one who reached out. Yeah.
And I mean, for a lot of people out there on dating apps, I know for me, it was a little suspicious because I never get the first message. So I was like, oh, great, it's another bot. Awesome. But glad it wasn't.
Did you like that approach when she complimented your eyes?
Yeah, that was definitely a first. It was better than just like the initial, like, hey, how's it going?
Hey, too
you
wise.
Busy? You up? Stuff like that. But yeah.
That's good.
Actual engagement is nice.
Yeah, that's kind of a sweet thing to say to someone is, I like your eyes.
That was my kind of approach for most of it, was just like, how can I start a conversation with someone? But I looked through Tyler's pictures, and I was like, oh, he's really cute. And just messaged him. I was like, maybe we can meet up somewhere. Not even realizing he was from Wisconsin or anything. And our first date, we went to, what was it called? Punch Bowl Social. And so he actually came all the way from Wisconsin. I met him Punch Bowl Social over in St. Louis Park, and we just
These are all Minnesota cities around the Twin Cities for anyone who's listening.
we hung out over there until like bar closed, and he ended up driving all the way back that night too. And we just kind of started talking, kept talking ever since. And shortly after COVID happened, I think our second date was at the movie theater just before they shut down for like several months to years.
So you guys initially met right before COVID, the shutdown in 2020. How long did you guys date, and were you able to spend much time together in that first year?
We both kind of jumped in like really quickly, almost. Some might consider it too quickly, but I think for me, I just saw Tyler. I was like, hey, I want to see where this is going. We actually moved in within about a month of knowing each other.
Ooh.
Which is very quick.
We made the decision to move in within like 60, I want to say it was like roughly 60 days if I have to get technical, but
Yeah.
We didn't actually move in together until like June of 2020.
Yeah.
Just because I needed to find work up here, needed to get money.
You wanted
for
to get out
moving
of
up and
Wisconsin.
everything. Yeah, and especially with everything at that time was just like figuring out.
So why'd you guys decide to move in so soon? Did it have anything to do with the pandemic? Was it just logistics, or was it just, I know that this person's for me long term?
A lot of it, for me at least, was I know I wanted to get out of my dad's house. Tyler wanted to get over to the Minnesota area, and we kind of just wanted to see where it goes from there. I knew that I kind of wanted to spend some time with him, see how we vibed living together, see if that was working long term, and it ended up working.
You just wanted to see how well do we get together under the same roof.
Yeah.
And if it works out, then we know that this is a long-term thing that we can explore.
Yeah.
So, okay. Good. Well, that's really interesting. That's fairly quickly after you guys got to know each other, but you felt comfortable enough with each other to say, yeah, I'll sign a lease with you.
Yeah.
I think the main part was just like when we were talking and like getting to know each other, because I think we were seeing each other like almost every other weekend or something.
It was yeah, like every other weekend, and it was either she was coming down to see me or I was going up there to see her.
And just constantly
And it
on
was
the phone.
one of the last times you came down where I was like, hey, like, I am just absolutely, like, awestruck, like, dumbstruck. Like, I need to do something about this.
I think one of the defining points for me was we were at Quick Trip, and it was just a little joke, but he came back with, like, 2 ring pops, and he's like, hey, you want to move in together? Or, like, you want to be my girlfriend or something like that?
Yeah,
That's kind of cute.
Just cheesy, yeah.
Super cheesy. Like, I don't know. I knew from, like, the beginning that I really liked you.
In those first few months, like, what about her did you really like? What about him did you really like?
I know
that was different from, like, past people that you've dated, for example.
Yeah. Oh.
For me, it was you being able to match my level of just crazy goofiness, which was something I felt like in past relationships I had to hide for a long time, but with her, it was like I could immediately be like as goofy as I wanted to, and it wasn't like being judged for it. So that was a big thing for me. So it was it was just kind of like when you're like, oh hey, this is someone who I'm going to be friends with for a long time, you know, but like just intensified.
Yeah, so you had a good sense like she was someone that you not only want to date, but someone that you could just comfortably be friends with and be yourself and be authentic around, and who shared your same sense of humor.
Yeah.
It was definitely a lot of, like, we had a lot of similarities of, like, things we like. I know we really connected on, like, Treasure Planet and Atlantis and, like, the golden age of Disney. And that was, like, a huge portion for me. I'm like, oh, no one ever brings this up.
You guys, your bond was solidified when you realized you like the same Disney movies?
God, that was one of them, for sure.
That and, like, that for sure, and it's just because, like, I've, like, going back and, like, watching home videos of me as a kid, I'm always watching a Disney movie, like, from the early 90s or whatever like that, so, I mean, that was big, always just kind of having that attention to media and being like, hey, this is what I really like to do, this is, like, my love language, is showing people movies and, like, TV shows and stuff that I like, and seeing, like, explaining, like, this is a part of my personality, or, like, this is something I like, so.
I think a lot of our first conversations was, oh my gosh, me too. Like, just a lot of that, hey, same. Like, I haven't found this in another person. That's also me.
So was it mostly, like, common interests, or was it also, like, values and beliefs and all of that you guys also felt the Me Too experience with? Because I think it's great that you guys kind of share, like, the same nostalgic childhood memories, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Around, like, Disney movies, having that context with each other. Were there other more serious compatibility factors that you were considering, like, some people, for example, religion is really important to them. Like, does he have the same religion that I do? Or educational background or some other values or beliefs? Were there any big ones for you guys that you were looking for? Or was that really not as much of a discussion in the early days?
There really wasn't much of discussion in the earlier days. I think, me personally, like, most of my past relationships had been failures just because, like, sometimes my personal hobbies would, you know, take over for, you know, days, weeks at a time. And it was not being, well, video games, music,
Oh, yeah, the
stuff
music.
like that. Like, and if I get like involved in something and get really into it, like I bunker down. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna 3 days just do this. Don't mind me. So it's being able to find someone that like is okay with that and doesn't like feel like that I'm ignoring them during, and like understands that like I need that time as much as they need their time to do their personal things too.
So it sounds like she gave you like the freedom or the space to enjoy your hobbies, have a life outside the relationship a bit, but also keep the relationship strong.
Yeah.
Me time is as important as we time.
Ooh,
So.
I love that. Me time is as important as we time. I'd put that on a sticker.
Yeah.
Honestly, yes.
How about you, Britt? Was there anything, like, it sounds like he wasn't in his mind really necessarily thinking about, like, oh, does she share some of these more bigger beliefs or value systems as me? Was there anything that in your mind that you were also looking for, like whether it was family-wise? I know that some women think, oh, you know, I'm looking for someone who could be a potential husband or father, or, you know, they're already in their mind thinking ahead a few years. Was that did that play a role in your consideration?
Not for me as much. I know some of the dating apps out there, like Tinder, will sometimes say what their belief systems are. I think Bumble will say like, oh, I'm agnostic, or oh, I'm Buddhist, or anything like that. I think for me, I wasn't so much concerned about that, but I did see a lot of similarities. I was just more so looking for someone that I meshed with. It didn't matter if they were completely different from me, or if I needed to learn like a new language, a new culture, a new style of living. As long as I could find someone who respects me and respects themselves and also just kind of vibes with me, that was my main thing.
Interesting. So it sounds like you were pretty open-minded to the kind of people you were going to meet.
It's kind of funny. I had actually just gotten out of a relationship, kind of a shorter relationship. When I found Tyler, I was actually planning to be on Tinder for a while and just like kind of go out there and meet people. Yeah. And Tyler was actually like the first person I messaged after that relationship, and we just kind of took off from there.
That's really cool. And so you lived together for a while, and then at what point did you guys realize we want to get married?
For me, marriage was never really something I considered or thought of. I know both of us with kind of anxiety, depression background, we're like, oh, I don't know if this will ever be in the cards for me, if this is even on the table. But for me, it kind of just came up as like, yeah, this is my best friend. Why wouldn't we just spend the rest of our lives together? It's just kind of a paper document saying that it's a legal thing, but for me, I was like, it doesn't change a whole bunch for us. We just get a ring and some fancy paper.
Tyler, you are legally her best friend.
Legally her best friend. Absolutely. It's the best kind of way.
You are obligated to be my friend now. Okay. You signed a paper. How about you, Tyler? How'd you come to the decision that this, like, marriage is the next step for us?
I mean, it's terrifying. I mean, obviously. Especially just because I know both of our backgrounds, both of our parents divorced. So, there is a little bit of that like weight of like making you feel like you have to make sure if you're going to do that it doesn't end up like your parents, right? I mean, that's the whole point of.
I think that was a huge portion for us, was that we had seen lots of divorce. My dad is divorced twice now, and neither of us wanted that, but we just saw each other as like our top best friends, our top confidant. Like anytime anything was bad with me, I remember the first time I even tried to say like, hey, maybe we should see other people, I unloaded all of this baggage onto him, and he's like, cool, I would love to stick around still. And that was my main thing, was he is the one, if he's going to accept me for all of my baggage and all of my problems.
That's really interesting. A couple things came to mind when you were talking, that your parents' history doesn't have to be your future. Just because your parents may have gotten a divorce, and that's kind of, I'm sure that probably had an emotional imprint on each of you going through that experience. And I can understand the fear that might bring up in your own decisions to commit to a partner in the future. But when you find a person that is for you or compatible and is your best friend, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have that same outcome in your own relationship that your parents. You know, sometimes people choose the wrong, incompatible people for them. Who knows what your parents may have chosen for themselves, but that doesn't necessarily mean, for anyone who's listening, just because your parents went through a divorce doesn't mean that you necessarily are destined to, or like predisposed to one or whatever. Like you can still find your own love story and
Absolutely.
you know make your own future path.
There's also putting on like all of your past traumas on me at the beginning.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right, where he gave you the space and he
Yeah.
was like, I'm still going to stick around, like someone who is just solid there for you, who, even if you may have like wanted to push him back a little bit, he was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. I'm still committed to you. So if you need to figure yourself out, that's fine. I'll be patient and wait for you. Is that how it kind of went? Or
Yeah, because I was totally ready to say, like, hey, I might just need, like, you seem amazing, but I'm not ready for this, or something else like that, because I need to work on myself. And I was ready to just, like, drop everything. And he's like, yeah, people have some baggage, and I'll accept yours.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's easier to tackle challenges when you've got more than one person working on it. Yeah.
And that is actually not something I had ever even considered, but being married now and being in this relationship for as long as we have, he is the first person I go to when anything happens, either good or bad, and I just want to share everything with you.
That's so amazing. You can't see this, but they're sweetly looking at each other and smiling, and their eyes are goo goo gaga. It's so cute.
Yeah, it helps being obsessed with your wife too.
Kinda, yeah.
100%.
But that's really great that it sounds like you guys operate as a team in good times and in bad. Like you feel comfortable coming to each other with, again, your celebrations as much as your hardships, and you guys together support each other through those experiences. That's really important and beautiful. Because I'm sure that there are people too who've had dating experiences where dating is good as long as both partners are at their best, but then when one has a hardship, the other goes running. So for people who are trying to figure out who's for them and who's not, this is an example of the benefits of choosing someone who sticks with you by your side when you do have natural hardships. Hardships come up in relationships, especially if you're going to be in a long-term relationship of 10 plus years. There's going to be hardships that you both face, and seeing how you guys encounter them together is, be aware of that. Like, are they there next to you, or do they run away? So good stuff. Okay, so we talked about how you guys met. We talked about some of the compatibility aspects that you guys were both drawn to when you met. What are some key factors that you feel when your relationship was challenged, you had to rely on? Were there any aspects of communication or any challenges that you've experienced in your young marriage or your relationship as a whole that kind of tested you a little bit, and how'd you get through that together?
I know one thing for me when we first started cohabitating, for sure, was the division of labor in terms of chores and stuff. And that was just a little hard at first until we opened up a line of communication where I said, hey, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And we actually kind of gamified it a little bit. So when we were playing video games together at night, we'd say, okay, whoever can find the legendary first will be the one to wash the dishes, or something else like that.
The loser, whoever doesn't get it, has to do X chore. Basically, whoever gets the X objective does Y thing, or you know.
And I think just a lot of open communication about, hey, I feel like we're lacking in this portion, or hey, I don't know how to do this, or what do we actually need to do? Like going down, both of us are really good with, Tyler specifically is really good about making lists. So having something to almost make it like a game or fun competition is kind of how we got around that. But as long as you can kind of just talk about it and realize that they're not your enemy, they are just your best friend just trying to solve a problem. That was my main thing.
I love that. So you focus on solving the problem together versus attacking the other person or blaming the other person, and you almost add a fun element to it, like a competitive or fun gamification to some things that neither of you necessarily would love to do. Like I'm sure like taking out the trash or washing dishes is not your favorite activity, but you try to make it as fair as you can, it sounds like. That's actually kind of innovative, how you guys approach it.
Yeah, I know for me, a lot of it was kind of trying to deal with that trauma response of, oh, they are not purposefully not trying to do this, or they are not like trying to leave this all for me. It's mostly just, oh, we forgot about this in the moment, or something happened that day that we all just got busy. But just remembering that they are a person as well, and not to get too stuck in your own head.
Mm-hmm. So you're assuming positive intent about your partner.
Yes.
When they do something that slightly irritates you, you're not automatically jumping to the negative assumption, like, they're trying to annoy me, aren't they? Mm-hmm. You're like, something probably just came up. We'll just talk about it, or, we'll make this fair. Mm-hmm. I think that's really positive. What about you, Tyler? Any other challenges that you can think of that...
Well, not so much any challenges, but to, like, kind of... as far as, like, the gamifying and everything works, like, yeah, it's fun to be able to do something and, like, delegate each other tasks, but there's also the times where it's like, if I work a 12-hour day, I have no, like, the whole 50-50, like, relationships are 50-50. It's like, if you look at things that way and you're always expecting each other to equally carry out things, like, that's where I feel like you're going to run into more problems and run into more arguments, because sometimes I don't have 50% to give. I don't have 5% to give today. And that's where we really do well, is that, like, if we communicate, like, hey, like, I can't do this today. Can you, like with the dog. If we need to take the dog out and it's just like, I can't get out of bed, I physically cannot move, I just not feeling it. Could you take the dog out for me? Like, it's just stuff like that, being able to...
how many spoons do you have each day?
Yeah,
What do you mean by how many spoons do you have each day?
So that's, I think that's an analogy that was created in the neurodivergent community. So you wake up during the day with so many spoons. So you have a spoon so that you can go out and work. You have a spoon to do dishes, and so many different tasks that you can delegate one spoon to. Mm-hmm. If you start the day with 3 spoons, you can only do 3 things before you're just out of energy and everything. And both of us were very familiar with that, and we that was our way of saying, hey, I can't do this today, or hey, I can do this, I can take this on, give me more things to do if you need some help.
Ooh, so thing. You guys were both familiar with this. It sounds like is it an analogy?
Yeah, spoons analogy.
It's just another way of saying, like, I have the energy or don't have the energy for it today. Like, it's like kind of like another, like a social battery kind of
social battery comparison.
Yeah. That's really interesting, though, just visually, visualizing it.
Like, I only have so many things from this pile that I can take from before. I no longer have anything. Like, there's no way to fuel.
Do you guys reference that analogy? Like, I only have 2 spoons today, or I'll give you 10 spoons if you trade me for 1.
We don't typically quantify it. It's just like, oh, hey, do you mind taking care of the dishes today? Oh, I just don't have the spoons for it. Like,
we were actually going to name.
We were gonna name our first dog that we got together Spoons, but
that's really cute.
Yeah, she already came with the name.
You guys are really, like, visual, it sounds like, when you approach, well, in some aspects of your relationship, like, you use gamification to kind of delegate tasks in a way. You use the spoons analogy to let each other know how much energy you have. These are really kind of creative.
It's a lot of communication.
Yeah.
It also breaks down the barrier of, like you said, like, are they doing something to annoy me? Like, without, like, I've had that, that anxiety in a lot of past relationships, and sometimes it's hard to just straight out ask. But, when we do things, I feel like when we do things this way, it's just there. We just know. Yeah. Just by having that open line of communication like that. So
speaking of communication, how has the communication between you both been compared to your past relationships? Like, how did communication here within this kind of, like, union differentiate from your past? And I'm sure that played a role in why you guys decided to choose each other.
I know for me, I was horrible with communication. Like, I would maybe try to bring up some things, but then my partner wasn't receptive to it or something else like that. But with Tyler, like, anytime I bring anything up, even if I'm incredibly anxious or I don't know how to put it into words, I'll literally just sit there and be like, hey, something's wrong. I don't know what's going on. And he will help me kind of figure things out. Not just because, like, I can't figure something out in my own head or I don't know what's going on. We'll kind of just talk about the situation and say, like, okay, this is what's happening. This is what's bothering me. Okay, how can we fix this? How can we make this a little bit better, kind of thing. So for me, it helps to just put everything out on the table and have someone respond and say, okay, I see that these things are going on. Maybe is this happening? Is this why you're feeling this way?
Interesting. So he helps you process your emotions when they're kind of ambiguous. So like if you don't know exactly like maybe how to label an emotion or why you're feeling a certain way, he has the patience, it sounds like, to help you process. Let's figure out what you're feeling and why so we can address it. Is that what
Absolutely,
happens?
yeah.
Okay, interesting. Green flag.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So
Green flags
good.
every day.
Green flags every day. That's another sticker. That needs to be another sticker. Green flags every day. Like, that's what we have to be striving for. How about you, Tyler? Anything communication-wise that really differentiated her or her approach with you than, past partners you may have dated?
Yeah, I know something that I do, and I know it's just part of me being me. It's just like, sometimes I'll say something, and if I don't feel like I really like said it in the way I was trying to like construe what I was saying, I'll be like, wait, hold on, let me explain why I just said that exact statement. And some people, I feel like, look at me like I'm crazy when I do that, because it's like, no, you said something, I understand that, but just part of my anxiety, I just have to make sure I'm not coming off the wrong way. And then that helps with her. But then also if there's like an argument where we're having, I was like, hey, wait a second, let me explain why I'm upset right now, and then I want you to explain why, like, I should, like, let me explain it, that what I'm upset at, just to make sure if I feel like we're having two different conversations, I'm like, here, this is what I'm upset about, and this is what I'm talking about. What are you talking about? Like, what conversation are we trying to have right now? Because I'm trying to talk about this. I feel like you're trying to talk about something else. If I'm trying to like vent about something or try to, so that also helps. And kind of like sometimes we just stop whatever. Sometimes I'll just stop the conversation that we're having, or she'll stop the conversation and be like, hey, hold on a second. Are we on the same page?
Bubblegum moment.
Yeah, we have like... Yeah.
What's this bubblegum? Bubblegum moment? What is this?
Stole it from Ted Lasso. There's something... I haven't even watched it. I just saw a clip on TikTok or something where...
What's a bubblegum moment?
Him and his wife have like this key phrase where if they say it, they have to be like 100% like truthful with the other, or they have to say it like... if they're just having like a really,
kind of like
really
come
bad,
to middle ground.
Right, like a, hey, I need you to...
Stop and
like,
listen.
Stop and listen to me kind of thing. Or like, or hey, I need you to stop and listen to me.
Or I need clarification on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like a moment where you both want to get on the same page. Like, either of you is like, hey, hold on, pause. We need to get on the same page here.
Yeah.
And what you said earlier, Tyler, about clarifying, like, wait a minute, I'm talking about this. Are we both talking about this?
Right.
I think that shows self-awareness. Like, you realize mid-conversation, because that does happen to a lot of people where one person is assuming one line of events or reasoning, and then the other person might be, their mind is kind of down a different path, and making sure, hold on, are we talking about the same thing here? Are we assuming the same things here? Where are we misassuming or misunderstanding each other? I think that's a really positive thing, to take a break and just make sure that you guys are at least in the same realm of conversation, so that it doesn't escalate into a bigger issue than it needs to be if they're just some simple things that are misunderstood, like basic assumptions that are potentially off. So I think that's really positive. You guys, look at all these great communication skills and great relationship skills that you guys have.
I think
Green, yeah, seriously.
We
And
both have come from like some traumatic relationships in the past, so I think both of us have learned a whole bunch of like, what do we need to work on in ourselves? What do we want to see in our partner? And honestly, we kind of just jackpotted each other. Like, we just found the right person.
Yeah.
well, so this is really interesting because, as you mentioned, both of you kind of came from homes that experienced divorce, so relationships that maybe didn't last as long as they could have, and also you came from somewhat traumatic relationships, you said, in the past before you found each other. How did you kind of work on yourselves, like you just mentioned? How did you work on yourselves? How did you develop these positive relationship skills? Did you have any role models? Did you read any books? Did you research anything specifically?
I think part of it for me was I actually worked in a domestic violence shelter straight out of college. So I was actively going around as like a peer advocate and telling people like, these are, in college I was a bystander intervention specialist. So a lot of the time I would be educating people on, hey, these are some red flags to look out for. These are some green flags to look out for. So I kind of visually saw things, but not always took that great advice. So for me, being able to know those things and tell other people like, hey, these are some great things to look out for. Maybe even going through someone's relationship with them and saying, hey, these are some great things. And then I've even noticed to this day, I will say like, oh yeah, Tyler and I do this, or Tyler and I ran into that, and here's how we came about with that, or something else like that. Just comparing it to not necessarily a golden standard, but what is a green flag, I guess.
Yeah, so you had some ideas in your mind that you researched of this is what a healthy relationship would look like, and these are some factors that would probably equate to an abusive or an unhealthy relationship. So at least you had some context in your mind for what are good relationships, what are bad relationships, and which category you want to be in, and which type of partner, what kind of factors you'd like to see, and standards, I guess, you'd like to see in the person that you're with.
Yeah, definitely being aware of those green flags that you want to see and those red flags that you want to avoid, for sure.
What a cool experience, though. I mean, as difficult as I'm sure it was to work in a domestic violence shelter with the experiences that I'm sure that you're brought into and had to coach people through, like you used it, it was a learning experience as well for you.
Absolutely.
So you probably got as much out of it as you gave as well. Fantastic. How about you, Tyler? Anything in your background
I mean,
that helped you?
Not as much as that, though. I mean, I don't even know. I've always been like a people pleaser from a young age, and I think just because my parents divorced at a very young age, be a key factor to that. But, I guess the biggest thing for me was finally seeing when someone else was also putting in the same amount of because I've always tried to build people up and try to help them become better versions of themselves. And then it was just realizing that I needed somebody like that for me as well. I couldn't be the only one in the relationship doing that. So
you were looking for someone who was also a giver because you realized that you were a giver as well.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's really important because there are some relationships where people who are givers find people who are takers, and then that becomes an exhausting relationship. But when you realize you're a giver and you find another giver, like we're seeing here, it makes the relationship more connected and almost balanced. You guys are both putting in the effort for each other, it sounds like. Oh, beautiful. But there weren't any books, Tyler, or any kind of people that mentored you or anything when it comes to relationships? Nothing that you actively sought out to learn or anything about relationships? It just was a natural thing as you evolved in life?
Yeah, it was just figuring out myself, I guess. Because I mean, a lot of stuff you see in the media will, as far as movies and TV shows and how they portray relationships is it's very toxic. And so a lot of family time as a kid was watching some programs like that. I don't know.
I think for both of us, neither of us really had a solid view of what a relationship should look like. So we kind of just built our own that we knew would work for us. And I think our personalities kind of played into that a little bit with the both being givers, but I think we kind of just made our own.
I've got a question for you, Tyler, when it comes to kind of processing your own kind of growth. As women, we're often encouraged to do self-reflection and journal. And for men, do you have male friends who also do that kind of work as well when they're in relationships or go into relationships? Or do you guys console each other or help each other when it comes to building relationship skills, or not so much? Is it more of a siloed experience?
In that kind of space, I guess when I do talk to my other male friends about their relationships, it's they're just, if it's something that they're complaining about, it's I don't have to deal with it. It's not like I don't have to deal with that, but it's, it's just, they'll say something, it's man, I wish I could talk to my girlfriend about this. And it's just why don't you just talk about it? Is it, and a lot of people, I don't want to look, weak, it's a lot of that toxic masculinity that also pulls into it too. It's just one of my friends has quite a questionable relationship, and I try to tell him about it and talk to him about it, stuff like that, and just keeps going back and do it because that's just all he's known growing up. So that for him is his normal, and it's not something he can kind of break away from, but he still comes to me to talk about it, and I just get to the point of buddy, that sucks. I'm here to help you when you want it, but in the sense that a lot of my guy friends, I guess, to break it down, don't try to better themselves because they don't know how to, essentially.
Interesting.
And they come to me well, how do you do it? I'm we just talk. But communication takes a lot of practice, like good open communication does. It's if you've been in a relationship for years and you haven't had good communication, you know, that's kind of like almost restarting the relationship at that point, you know.
I think kind of going based off of your toxic masculinity portion too, like that is a big thing to be able to put that aside and say, okay, I am going to listen to you, or I am going to let you know of my feelings. I think that's huge for a lot of people, but not too much a problem for you.
I just haven't ever I mean, there's been times where we both didn't have jobs. Not at the I mean, there was one time for like a couple weeks together, but I'd left a job in like end of 2020 just because it was
not a good environment.
It was retail during COVID. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
And I didn't let that like affect me being like, oh, as the man, I need to be the one like making the money and making sure I'm paying the bills, because I never really felt that way, because we've always just had like a, hey, like this needs to get paid. Can you pay it, or do I need to pay it this time? You know, it's just like that also helps too. It's like not having to feel like one of us has to be the breadwinner. It's just like whoever was doing better off at the time. You know, again, like just kind of sharing that burden, or like
not the 50-50.
Kind of like not the 50-50. Yeah.
Very fluid.
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like it might not be 50-50 all the time, but it sounds like it's a balanced relationship where it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it goes through a season where one partner is giving a little bit more than the other, but then the other partner, you know, maybe compensates later on when one of you guys is maybe doing less than the other, however it is. Yeah. But it sounds like it's a balanced relationship, even if it's not strictly 50-50 all the time.
Right.
And you mentioned, Britt, about how Tyler shares feelings, and you were talking about how in masculine culture maybe that's not as well received. Do you find that, Tyler, with your male friends, that in relationships, well, first off, do you feel like you express your feelings to her or are open in communicating that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. No question about it.
And I think that is probably why you guys succeed in your conversations.
Absolutely.
And in conflict resolution, because I think when you're suppressing certain thoughts or feelings and you're not sharing them and you're just holding that resentment against your partner, that's when I think things can escalate into passive-aggressive behavior and other things like that. So I think it's a good thing that you're sharing that's an element of healthy communication, is sharing your feelings openly. Doing so will just facilitate communication and connection. Good stuff. Any last minute advice that you have for anyone listening who is interested in building a healthy, lasting relationship, potentially getting married, or even potentially married right now and just looking forward to building and growing a great connection? Any parting words that you have for our audience?
There's always going to be good times. There's always going to be bad times. But as long as you can stick together as best friends, or at least partners who have each other's backs, that's all you really need.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I'll second that. Kudos. Ditto?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your lives so openly, and your advice and the wonderful things that you have going for your relationship. I'm sure a lot of people will take notes and learn a lot from this. So thank you so much, Britt and Tyler. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having us.
I've done a lot of research on, I don't know if you're familiar with like the psychology of attachment theory, or just how your parental relationships and the bonds that you witness as children between your parents and their relationships with you, how that impacts your lifelong relationships. And there is such a trend in, okay, well, we learn and we see certain things modeled to us, so sometimes we repeat those same habits in adulthood to our detriment. But you guys model that even if maybe you didn't have, I don't know the quality of the relationship of your parents' relationship together, but even if it wasn't ideal, even if there was a breakup, you guys still navigated your way to healthy relationships in adulthood. So it is possible. Hope is not lost. You can learn about yourself as you did, Britt. You can learn through observation or even research, as you did before you worked at the domestic violence shelter. What is good in a relationship? What is bad in a relationship? And then you apply that to your own relationship with success. I think that's so beautiful. And then you said, Tyler, earlier, your relationship is something you don't have to think about.
Yeah, just not having to think about it, I guess, is just nice. I guess I didn't really thought about it until we did this, just like all my past relationships, I was constantly stressed by them at some, if it got to that point, it was just like, if I can't have that conversation with that person, be like, hey, this has really been bugging me, and a lot of the times they've just pushed it off because a lot of people don't like having tough conversations, but if you can't have the bad conversations with the good conversations, then I feel like you can't have conversations in general.
I think a huge part of that for me was learning to have those, and that's something I've worked on significantly since being with you.
Yeah.
I've done research on that too. Although it's fantastic when you do work on yourself independently before you enter a relationship and such. And I think at one point too, Britt, you mentioned that you want to take a step back from the relationship so that you can go work on yourself. But then you also hear stories of sometimes the best work happens in a relationship where you get to practice what you've learned. So it's almost like your playground of sorts of, okay, so I know that I should be doing this and this is a good practice, whatever, let's actually put this into play. Because you can read all day long that conflict resolution is important, but until you're actually in the midst of a conflict trying to figure it out with the other person, you realize, oh, okay, this is what I need to work on, or these are some approaches to using to solving conflict. So I think it's great that you guys gave each other the space to learn together.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both still kids just going through life, and we're doing it together.
As we wrap up another episode of Connection Artist, I want to express my gratitude to you for listening and exploring how we can all grow and better connect with one another. I created this podcast to support your relationship success and happiness. If you found value in this episode, here's how you can support me and help spread the word about this podcast. First, subscribe to this podcast and share it with 10 friends. If you share this education with 10 people and they share it with 10 people and so on, we can grow this movement of creating a more loving and caring world. If you'd like to show your support on a personal level, visit www.analuca.com. That's ANALUCA. Explore my heart-centric products and education, from poetry books to online courses, art prints to apparel. Every purchase directly enables me to continue producing episodes and sharing these valuable stories and insights with you, because this podcast is not free to create. Please consider buying something I've made with my heart and soul to connect with you. Discover handmade heart-shaped art prints and hoodies featuring my exclusive Crypto Love Drops collection at www.artbyanaluca.com. Read about the inspiration behind these beautiful heart artworks at cryptolovedrops.com. These make really great, unique gifts for your friends, family, and spouse, and serve as a lasting symbolic reminder of your love for them. Or if you enjoy journaling or you'd like to start, get my 15-minute daily guided journal for confident mindset titled Yes, I Can. If you want more stories, buy my poetry book, The People We Meet, available on Amazon or directly on my website, artbyanaluca.com. Just click on the Books tab. Listen to my music album called Reprise on Spotify. Fun fact, the opening music track that you heard on this podcast is actually composed by me and is featured in my music album. If you want to learn how to strengthen your self-worth, get my digital ebook called Well Valued, which features a 30-day blueprint for building self-worth. Or if you're single and want to learn how to assess and find your most compatible dating partner using AI, get my digital course called Well Matched. These products are all designed to strengthen your self-worth and relationships and are all linked in my website, www.analuca.com. Also, don't forget to check out my hand-illustrated apparel line at www.laughstoself.com. I hand-designed really funny, cute illustrations that made me laugh, but also serve the purpose of spreading humor, love, and connection with others. That apparel line of hoodies, t-shirts, and sweaters are exclusively available only on my website, so if you want to wear something unique, check out laughstoself.com. Connect with me on social media for podcast and life updates. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Anna Luca Official. And lastly, if you're based in the United States and would like to be interviewed on the podcast, send me a message at myconnectionartist@gmail.com to potentially join me as a guest on this show in the future. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot in reaching more listeners like you who can benefit from this information. Thank you for being a part of this Connection Artist community. I'm wishing you so much love and happiness in your relationships. Stay tuned for the next episode.